Greetings, magical mavens. You may have heard of the concept of the Age of Aquarius and how all the changes the world is going through are due to our transition into it. But did you know that it's actually just a macrocosm of the exact same cyclical living concept that we work with on the Wheel of the Year? In this episode of the Alchemy of Affluence podcast, I'm joined by Zoe Hind, one of my favorite astrologers and one of my early influences when I first started my Wheel of the Year journey. I first discovered Zoe back in 2014 or so through her YouTube series with Daligan called The Witch's Zodiac. In the series, they demonstrated how the pagan sabbats and the Zodiac year are intrinsically linked, and how to utilize their natural energies to experience more fulfillment in your life and spiritual practice. Zoe teaches cyclical living not only through the seasons of the year, though, but also through what's called the Great Year, the 25,800-year cycle consisting of 12 ages. And you guessed it, each age of the Great Year is ruled by one of the same 12 zodiac signs that rule over our 12-month zodiac year. Much like we do with the month of Aquarius in late January through early February, as a collective, we're experiencing overarching themes of humanitarianism, individualism, rebellion, inventiveness, independence, intellect, and innovation. And by combining these overarching Aquarian themes with whatever we are experiencing in the Wheel of the Year and our own personal transits, we're able to channel our energy into expanding our lives and expanding the horizons of humanity together. We invite you to grab a cup of something cozy and join us for this expansive conversation about how observing the passing of the seasons helps us to learn how to be in the right place at the right time, escaping from the time constriction of linear thinking, simplifying astrology and bringing more purpose into the pagan sabbats, reclaiming the feminine in astrology after centuries of patriarchal interpretations, and reclaiming the feminine nurturing power of the earth signs. Differences between the Wiccan and Druidic seasonal beliefs, how to place the sabbats in your birth chart to create a personal calendar and derive a deeper individual meaning, calculating and celebrating your own personal astrological new year, working with the tarot and embodying archetypes of your inner self to aid you in learning astrology, and what lockdown had to do with manifestation, the Great Year, and the Age of Aquarius. So let's dive into this magical conversation with Zoe.
Hi, Zoe. Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too.
So we're going to dive right in with some questions about seasonal magic. So first things first, what is your favorite season or Sabbath?
Well, I think the Samhain is the most tangible because I think all around the world we get that very magical feeling at Samhain. So that's the one that stands out because there's nothing really in the Christian calendar that strongly, but you see all the kids running around and the colours, the purple sky and the orange leaves, and there's just that real sense of being between the worlds. So I think although it's a classic one, I would say the Samhain one is possibly the most enjoyable.
Yeah, like it has that collective feeling of magic. It's not just witches who are celebrating, like everyone's kind of tapping in, which kind of, I don't know, it adds a little something extra. So next question is, what inspires you most about working with the Wheel of the Year? I know you're big into astrology, obviously, and I actually learned from you in the Witch's Zodiac series that astrology and the Wheel of the Year actually work together. So is it astrology or is there something else that's super inspiring about it to you?
Well, that was such a privilege to be able to bring that information forwards because up until then you'd got the Wiccans and the Druids celebrating the Wheel of the Year and the astrologers celebrating astrology. But to actually realize that the two fit together, that was one of my favorite deliveries of content, really. So it's being able to be in the right place in the right time, observing the passing of the seasons. People say things like, oh, we didn't have a good summer, and phrases like that. What they mean is they didn't get enough sunny holidays off. Mm-hmm. But with the Wheel of the Year, there's something every 6 months. We're in tune with nature and time works in a spiral, not a line. So it's really lovely to observe nature, be in the seasons, and just not have the pressure as well. If you think about Christmas for the non-pagans, it's this mighty pressure point. and the rest of us are just like, okay, next.
Yeah.
So it's being in the right place, right time, and in connection with the spiral of time, I think is what really is beautiful about bringing those two together.
Yeah, and could you actually elaborate on what do you mean by the spiral of time? Because I feel like we each kind of have a different idea of what that means, and I'd love to hear what your perspective is.
Certainly. Well, when we look at how time is delivered to us, it's always linear. So everything's a rush from cradle to grave. Everything's in entropy, just constantly getting worse. And there's this very low energy towards looking at linear time. You look at somebody that should be celebrating another year on this beautiful planet, but they're going, oh, I can't believe I'm going to be 40 next year. We've got this horrible kind of time constriction to the way that we look at time. But when we're dealing with the wheel of the year and the seasons, every cycle of the sun around the zodiac is a chance to raise your consciousness.
Yes.
So everything's circling and growing and spiraling, just like the atoms in our body and many other things that occur naturally. Everything's in a growth pattern. Although with the seasons, we obviously go inwards and release, and then we come out refreshed. So there's that growing and letting go pulse as well. That's part of it. But if you look at people that don't know this, their calendar is literally a grid. They're literally in a cubicle office kind of mentality, and then checking off the days until whatever is going to happen to them, or however they see things. And it seems really depressing compared to what we can learn from just working with the cycles and nature, and trying to go level up each time rather than going around in circles.
Yeah, I totally agree. And interestingly enough, when I was a little kid and I didn't know anything about the wheel of the year, I would look at my little grid calendar and I'd see where it would say like autumn equinox or winter solstice. And I would actually count down the days to those days, even though I didn't really know what the purpose of it was. There was just something magical and exciting about it, you know? So did you actually discover the wheel of the year in adulthood, or is it something that you were kind of tapped into as a kid as well?
I think we're all tapped into it with Christmas, Easter, and Halloween. We just don't realize often that the other ones complete the wheel. But as soon as I started studying astrology, I kind of tapped into it at that level. But it wasn't till around the early 2000s that I was actually in a group that was very connected to that, and I learned about the goddess lore and the different customs and things like that. So, but my parents were pretty druidic and Wiccan anyway, so we lived a very natural lifestyle. But the actual wheel of the year as it's presented now, that came in around the early 2000s, but just immediately clicked and made a lot of sense.
Yeah, and did you realize right away that it was perfectly aligned with astrology, or did that like occur to you at some point later on?
It did, because it's strange with astrology. They're almost, I forget which way around it goes, but we've got this idea of left brain and right brain. And when you're dealing with astrologers, they're kind of very technical, and they start saying things like, oh, Taurus the bull. And then when you realize that it's actually got to be the cow and the bull, because of where it is in the zodiac and where it is represented in what's called the great year, then the pagan side of things just makes a lot more sense. It's softer, it's more feminine, and you can actually start to rewrite astrology and put it back to how it would have been, because it's gone a little bit too heady and technical. So yeah, pretty soon as I discovered the wheel of the year, then I could absolutely see the energies of the solstices and equinoxes and how that fits perfectly with the astrological signs.
Yeah, I love that. Like kind of adding, because I'm just starting to learn a lot more about astrology now. Like I've been listening to your forecasts for years, but I've never like really sat down and tried to really learn astrology until recently. And what I'm realizing is a lot of traditional astrology does have that sort of masculine oriented energy to it, where like there's only one female planet and they kind of, make her do double duty and all that sort of stuff. And I love that when you sort of combine it with a more pagan explanation, you realize that there's a balance in everything, which is like so mind blowing. It's like, why weren't these things put together in the first place,
Well, I feel they were, and it was taken out.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look over a longer period of time, we can see what's degraded in mythology and astrology, and we can have the audacity to put it back how it was. So an example of that in common sense is that Venus and Neptune are an octave away. They're 8 planets away. And we've got the current representation of Neptune being this trident sea god. But if Venus is the earth feminine, then Neptune would be the high priestess, kind of spiritual feminine. And Mars and Pluto are the same. They're an octave away, and you've got the earth masculine and the alchemical masculine. So it only takes a bit of a peeling off of the surface to actually put it back to how it probably was. And it's quite an honor and a privilege to be able to do that work.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, because we think of water as a feminine element, but yet we have these masculine archetypes sort of ruling over them. It doesn't make a ton of sense. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm curious, because you mentioned like holidays like Christmas and stuff, which, like, if you're super pagan, you might not even be concerned with. We have, our winter solstice, and then we have, 7 others. But if you had to kind of pick one in your personal practice that you see as the new year, which one would that be? For me, it's the winter solstice. I know for a lot of people it's Samhain, so I'm curious.
Well, I'm more aligned to the Druidic rather than the Wiccan, so I can see why the Wiccan would have Samhain going into the dark to be conceived and then coming out into the light. But I'm a very solar person, so the rebirth of the sun is the obvious one for me. And then as an aside, you'd have the spring equinox is the start of a new zodiac cycle. But by that point, the plants are already coming up. Do you know what I mean? We've already started. So I particularly love the winter solstice for that. And it's a celebration because it was actually about survival in the old days. You needed the harvest of the next year. And if the sun didn't come back, then you wouldn't have the fertility of the land. So why people go and actually witness the sun's arc growing in strength, there's a sense of joy and relief and gratitude really around the winter solstice, which I think makes that one the new year for me.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And I don't even remember off the top of my head, but chances are the reason I feel that way is from watching your videos. So full circle moment. So I'm also curious, do you work with the wheel of the year and or the astrology wheel for manifestation at all?
I think there's a natural cycle, as I said slightly earlier. Sometimes the emphasis would be on letting go of things rather than manifesting things. So you would be working with astrology and the wheel of the year. An example would be that you are seeing your solar light, your energy grow from the winter solstice to the summer solstice. So that's obviously a time of growth and radiance. But then it's kind of unmanifesting, really. What do you do in the dark half of the year to actually let go and make some space? So that would be the obvious one, from the winter to the summer solstice. I do follow the zodiac months. So each time the sun goes into a new zodiac sign, I'll be turning my energies to that part of my chart and what energies are best for me to harvest personally. And I think that's really key, because we start off celebrating the sabbats as a whole, as general, but if you can start placing them in your own chart, then you can see where they're effective for you and what intentions and things like that you can set. So I would say yes, but on a very deeply personal level, according to my chart and where it's all happening for me.
Yeah, and that's what I love about your channel, is that you actually break it down and you mention to people during your forecast. And like, this isn't, this is kind of for everybody, but this isn't going to be exactly the same for each person because we all have different charts. So would you be able to kind of give us an idea of what that practice looks like for you? Like, do you, when the zodiac, or when the sun moves into a new zodiac, do you see where that shows up in your chart and then kind of work with the themes, or how does that work for you?
So this is an example of a chart, and every chart looks completely different. So I can place when the sun's moving around my chart. I can place when it's going over one of my home planets. That's a day for personal intention setting or meditation or whatever, because it's a personal transit. So one of the readings I like to do is to create your own personal calendar, and it's all the sun's transits over your home planets. And that's not going to be visible even in a weekly recording like my one, because it's going to be so particular to you. And as an example, most people don't realize that they've got a personal new year. So the personal new year for me is when the sun goes over your ascendant and starts a new cycle. But there's actually a day in the year when you can celebrate your personal new year, and no one's going to tell you about it. It's just completely obscure. So that would be where to start, really. And then the tracking the sun over your main planets. And then if you want to go one step further, tracking the retrogrades, which are coming in really strong now. So I don't know how you were feeling. I don't know how much you follow along, but there was a very strong Mercury retrograde in Gemini earlier this year.
Oh yeah, I'm a Gemini ascendant, so I felt that one for sure.
Super powerful. And now we've got Jupiter over Saturn. So yeah, I would say when the sun goes through a house in your chart, you can have a look and learn about that house. If it goes over a planet, you can set time aside to learn about what that connection is, and with the retrogrades as well. I mean, it's as complex as you want to make it be, but I would just say take a year first to go all the way around your chart and live it. And then you can bring the layers in after that. Because I think one of the things that happens with astrology is people try to take too much on too soon, and they get scrambled and exhausted, and nothing ends up making sense. So yeah, that's definitely the way that I work with things, is to see what's happening for me now, and even pull some tarot cards on it. The depth of tarot when you're actually calling cards for transits is astounding.
Yeah, it totally is. And something I love about your channel is that even outside of like the Witches Zodiac series, you still kind of teach people that even if, for example, for me, my sun sign is Aquarius. And, when I was younger, I'd read the magazines and there'd be a little horoscope and I'd say it was crap and maybe this isn't real. But you teach that we actually have every sign in our chart somewhere. And as the sun goes through that cycle throughout the year, we have the ability to look at different sides of our personality and develop. And I just love that so much. It just adds so much depth to astrology for someone who might be a beginner, but without like totally overwhelming them and making their brain explode.
Exactly. And again, you can work with pacing. You know your sun sign, so then you start to find out your moon sign, and you're going to work with that a bit more, bring those two in like a yin yang. But you might start to get curious then and start to look at Mercury and Venus and Mars, but just leave it there and incorporate those. But they're all archetypes within us. So once you know all your home planets, I call it your inner universe. Because, for example, the Venus is your empress and Jupiter is your queen and Uranus is your rebel. And once you actually do the alchemical work and go and find your inner crew, your inner universe, then you can start to feel them. And that's a really wonderful way of learning astrology, rather than reading disjointed random passages in a book. And also what you find in the books is they, as you were saying earlier, they've kind of masculinized things. There's a almost loathing for the earth signs, which really annoys me. But I've put Earth back in the center of my system, because with the paganism and everything, it's the celebration of nature and our place in space and time. So it's been a real joy and a pleasure to be able to bring the Earth signs to life, because they're just described as Taurus boring, Virgo OCD, and Capricorn gold digger, and it doesn't make any sense at all with the spiritual depths that those signs have. So it's just great fun to be able to realize that we're all the signs, we're all the planets, and come back into almost a soul retrieval of our whole self.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, for years, I didn't understand how the earth signs in astrology work, because as a witch, I love the elements. And I always saw earth as being this like grounding, feminine, nurturing sort of sign. But then it's like, how come the zodiac signs don't seem to share that perspective, at least what I had learned about them previously? So it almost kind of goes back to that concept of people being told that in order to be spiritual, you have to like not pay attention to the earth element, not care about like the material side of things. And that's like too masculine, for spiritual people. But when we actually look at the wheel and the balance, we realize that not only is Earth a feminine sign with feminine energy, but it also needs to be there in order for us to have a complete human experience, you know?
Exactly. We're here to bring heaven to earth. So the earth signs have the power of, for example, Taurus, heart, presence, gratitude. I'm not sure there's a higher frequency than that. So Taurians are very, very blessed if they can get over the personality types and actually embody that presence and gratitude. Capricorn for me is like the gold inside the mountain. It's real deep, old druidic, old oak forest, solid, sturdy, beautiful energy, and yet it's not written about very, very well. So I think the earth signs are amazing, because if people are too much in their head, which is what's happening at the moment, one of the quickest ways that you can get back to presence is by using your body and the senses. And I don't know if you know, but I created a series called Transcending the Negative Mind, and there's a video for each month. So there's one for Capricorn, Aquarius, etc. You don't have to be that sign, but it's ways to get out of your own head and practical tips onto how to use all of the tools that we've got, because this world has gone very, very mental. So actually, I think the earth signs have got the advantage there, because they can actually more quickly get to a state of stillness and presence.
Yeah, I loved that series because it kind of brought, again, that sort of paganism aspect together with another, or supposedly another modality, but really they're kind of the same. So, you know, it kind of shows us that it is the same. So for those listening who don't know, it's, would you say it's kind of like not like the astrological with the psychological? Is that kind of what you would call that series?
It's to get out of the mind. So transcending the negative mind, practical tips and tricks on how to get out of your head and actually be present and work with your body energies, cleanse your energy field, and live a more wholesome, light and happy life. So it's largely concerned with the mind, because last year I felt, coming out of the pandemic and things like that, the mental health issues was something that I wanted to address and give people actual things that they could learn. But each sign has got a different mentality, a different thing that they might be doing to themselves. So I did one for each month and one for each sign, so that there's different ways that people can tune in.
Yeah, it's so funny, like being an Aquarius, like I am very air heavy. So I'm like, yeah, it's psychology, right? Like everything's psychology. But like to me, everything is psychology. But you're right, it's about like what is, you know, some breathing techniques or some yoga you can do to kind of take these concepts and bring them more into the body, right?
Mm. And it's all spiritual, you know. If the psychological and the mental doesn't consider the spiritual aspect, so it's to remind people that your heart will be your spiritual center, your soul center. So it's okay to be in your head if you're using your mind for something that's of your heart's bidding, but not to go off crazy and drive yourself crazy with too much thoughts and worries and anxiety and things like that. So I'm largely spiritually based, so it will always be about how you can come into your alignment and your wholeness and express your unique soul self. But I just felt that everybody was being pushed too far into their heads.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's something we're still clearly navigating, you know, like, and I don't know, maybe you can tell me, is there a not a psychological, now I'm confusing my words. Is there an astrological reason, do you think, that that whole, like, everyone being in their heads for a while was, like, necessary? Like, is that part of a grand scheme of unfoldment? I know you kind of have that message in most of your videos, but can you kind of sum that up for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've got this thing called the Great Year, which is 25,920 years long. And the part that people will be aware of is called the Age of Aquarius. And that's 2,160 years long. We're just cusping into that now. So what happened when everybody was slowed down? They had to face themselves, really. We were taken out of distraction, out of busyness, out of the mental matrix for a while. But then obviously it's not the easiest process to suddenly have to sit and face your own issues. So that was largely my reasoning, due to the time that we're in and where we're heading, where it's all going to be about consciousness. and your head will only ever get in the way unless you rein it in. So slowly, week by week, I'm hoping to guide people back into the fact that your heart actually transmits massive vibrational waves. And whatever you're feeling, you're going to start attracting quicker and quicker. When we speak about manifesting, it used to be like living in treacle. It used to take 2 or 3 years to actually send out an intention and receive back. It's going to become almost instant. But it's not going to be thoughts and words and writing things on paper and burning them and things like that will work. It's going to be you will attract what you are. So we've had a whole 5-year period really of clearing out everything that's repressed, all the negative energies that we've been sending out, so that we can be sovereign. And this is for you and me. This is Aquarius. It's the sovereign emperor with the heart of a lion. Because the way I see astrology is 6 pairs. So Aquarius Leo is 1. So we're here to master the frequency of the heart and align with consciousness and heart-centered manifestation. So kind of big question, hopefully that made some sort of sense, but that's where we're at this time. And if we're walking around with a lot of repression and fear, the chaos that could cause would be, bringing that instantly back to you when you do actually have the chance to get your mind, turn it inwards and go to the root of whatever that problem is. So that's where psychology comes in as really useful, if you can actually grasp the fact that you're empowered enough to go and actually find the root of whatever's concerning you and do your own inner gardening.
I love that, inner gardening. And yeah, you're absolutely right, because seriously, when I first discovered magic and manifestation, it felt like everything was just taking forever. Like I feel like I've been working on it for many, many years, and it's like 7 years after I started, it's now the time when I'm starting to be able to manifest much more quickly. And it's from years of doing shadow work and like kind of like you were talking about in your series, like releasing all of these like ego mental programs that we're running on. Even those of us who are super spiritual and have been super spiritual for a long time, we still have our own hangups and our own belief systems and all these things that may have been serving us. But I guess what you're saying is that even some of those things are not necessarily going to serve us in this next chapter.
Yeah, I feel that if you shift perspective to the realization you've already got everything. Because the thing with manifestation is can be a lack consciousness. I lack this and therefore I'm going to XYZ in order to get that thing that's outside of me. But one good thing about the stripping down of the last couple of years is to actually realize and appreciate what we do have and the simple things in life. They spoke about essentials. And I think that's been very useful for people to get off that rat race. And it was interesting that we came out of the rat race in the year of the rat. That amused me greatly, that we were in the year of the rat and all of a sudden people are working from home and simplifying and stripping back. So I would say, yeah, it's all about what frequency you're transmitting. But the perception shift that we're going to go through is actually, I've already got everything. And the consciousness raising will be our connectedness to the divine rather than seeing ourselves as separate somehow.
I can totally relate to that. Like I've been telling people recently, like I used to use tarot cards constantly and, just constantly learning different modalities. And I still love those things, but I've noticed like every morning I do still use my pendulum a little bit more. So I'll ask my higher self, like, are there any messages or requests for me this morning? And I used to get a lot more messages and requests. And I've noticed lately, I just never get any anymore. And so I was like, is this just because I already have everything I need and I don't need all of these messages and all of this guidance? And I got a yes. So yeah, it's crazy. Have you kind of experienced that too, where you're not really feeling as much desire to do like all the rituals and the tools as much?
I am really enjoying using tarot on an ever more deepening level, because it's obviously the question in tarot, not the answer, that's the most important thing. So as I say, I'll use it for the best use of energies during a transit. But the intention underneath that is raising consciousness and releasing stories and blockages, things like that. But we're very much going into a phase where it's about being, not doing. So this is where the silence is coming in, because people are very much still, you know, what shall I do today? Or, you know, what's the best way to grow my business or whatever? And that external pushing, doing, trying, can you just not? What resistance do you get if you just don't? We're really in a very profound time, and the controlling and the program that's around us starts to freak out sometimes if we just stop and don't. And yeah, so it's a very strange time to be witnessing. We don't have a roadmap for this, but we're guided most definitely every day. And I think the tools, yeah, they can be very, very deep. As an example, a lot of my clients at the moment, there's very strong past life energies coming up for clearance, and there's even meetings of people, and it's very confusing because we're in a boy meets girl matrix energy here, where it's if you meet someone, then you might try and make that into a relationship. But some of its complicatedness that's coming up is because what if you've already had a relationship with this person and the soul contract this time has come up for resolution and observation and inspection. So sometimes tarot can be very good on past life and soul contracts, just to bring that sense of clarity that we're broadening our perspective from what we think somebody should be for us and what the actual connection is. So I must admit, I use tarot daily, not really for myself, but it's an amazing tool, especially combined with astrology. They're two wheels on the same bicycle. It's absolutely incredible. And if you can see everything in imagery, so one of the things I love to do is put the major arcana around someone's chart so they can see their own tarot scope in images. And that makes a lot more sense than looking at a chart, which is squiggles and symbols to the beginner. So, yeah, personally, I still love tarot, and it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
I love that. And yeah, I totally agree. Like, I feel just as inclined to help others with the tarot, but for some reason, it's almost like I've learned what I needed to from it, but like I can still learn from working with other people. I don't know. It's weird. When I first discovered tarot, I was so obsessed with it because it is so magical and so useful as a tool. But I thought I would always be pulling cards for myself like every day or every week. And it's almost weird to not be doing that. You know, it's kind of like an identity shift. But I guess that's part of this shift that we're all going through. And thank you for sharing some really interesting perspectives on that. So I have one more quick question for you before we wrap up. Because as an Aquarius, I'm just always dying to know, what is your definition for the age of Aquarius? Like, I've kind of heard it described a few different ways. I'm really curious to know, what do you feel defines it, like from like an astrological standpoint?
I think it's unique soul expression. So everybody's vibration is going to be different according to the makeup of their chart, according to their electromagnetic pulse, and everybody's age of their soul and the experience they're having here is going to be different. But if you imagine everybody here contributing to the experience that is life as a whole, then it's going to be personal responsibility, independent thinking, and unique soul expression, which then ties in with what I was saying about being responsible for what you're transmitting on a consciousness level and tuning into manifestation that way. So yeah, it's very exciting, isn't it, for us to be Aquariuses at this time?
Yeah, and would you say, because like you and I have an Aquarius sun, it's kind of like the stuff that we've always been doing is becoming more important for us to share and continue honing. Would you say people who don't have Aquarius in, say, their sun, moon, or rising, would they look at their chart to see where Aquarius does show up and sort of lean into that form of expression, or how would that benefit everybody?
Well, something massive is coming up, something absolutely huge. Pluto's about to move into Aquarius. So everybody needs to look at where the cusp between Capricorn and Aquarius is in their chart. if you don't have a planet there, because it's Aquarian energy is still valid, whether you've got Mars in there or Pluto or whatever, you'll have some expression. But wherever that cusp between Capricorn and Aquarius is just going to get stronger and stronger towards 2024 until we really launch into these Aquarian energies. And the thing that's hidden in charts is that you might have something opposite, or you might have something square, or you might have something making a different angle to it. So it's very rare that anybody would have a totally silent part of their chart, because even the planets today are going to be going through and highlighting that aspect of themselves. So I'll actually be doing readings on that particular degree of the zodiac and where it is in your chart, because that's going to be a call to arms in vibrational consciousness. This is going to be your contribution and why you came here at this time. So you and I are Sun in Aquarius, and we've been prepping ourselves and getting all of this research down and comfortable and leading the way. But now the world's coming round to actually being ready to receive this and actually realize its value. But everybody's got part in their chart which will show them purpose and passion and unique contribution. And that's just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger from now on.
That sounds so exciting. Like, doesn't it just make you tear up a little bit as an Aquarius? Like, yes, this is just what we've been wanting.
Yeah, in my videos, I keep saying we came here for this, because a lot of people are seeing things slightly differently and saying, oh, everything's horrible, or this is bad, and, falling into that kind of fear consciousness. But what if you're a warrior? What if you came here for these times? What if you can get excited and let go of anything that's drudgery and heavy and actually tune into that sense of Aquarian excitement and rebelliousness?
Yes, it's so empowering.
Mm.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Zoe. This has been amazing, especially for me, because like I said, this is such a full circle moment for me, because when I kind of first discovered the Wheel of the Year, you were one of the first people I started following, and it's helped me so much. So can you tell us where to find you, what you're offering right now, and how people can work with you?
Sure. I have a YouTube channel, ZoeAstro, and I do a video every week and all my playlists. So there's the Witch's Zodiac, which is the seasons of the year and how we've put astrology back in. There's Transcending the Negative Mind. This podcast will be there as well. I have a video for each planet, a video for each sign, and a system in my course where you can use those videos to go in and find your inner universe, your archetypes. So lovely. I see YouTube a bit like a library. You just put all your things there and it's there for posterity and hopefully helping people. I don't activate much on Facebook and Instagram, but I do have those. So Facebook is AstroZoe and Instagram is Zoe Hind 7. But at the moment, I just tend to post my links up there to my weekly videos. But my favorite thing is just email me and we'll customize something. So I have a 13-module astrology course, and you can pick and choose which bits you want to do or do the whole thing. I have a trinity of tarot courses. I have a feng shui course, which is how to use the Wiccan elements and bring harmony to your space. And I love teaching all of those subjects and more: numerology, herbology, druidism. So there was so much that my website stopped making sense. And I thought, well, again, why not simplify and just be everything? And if you want to just email me with a whole big wish list of anything that you'd like to explore, then I'm here. Or if you don't know what you want and you'd like a phone call to kind of customize something for your desires, then I've just got lots of time. I'm really happy to be here doing this work at this time.
Well, I love that. Like, get rid of all the complicated stuff on the website. Just come to me. Like, I love that you're embodying that, like, being instead of doing, which is so perfect. So thank you so much for being here. I hope we will be able to talk to you again sometime.
Absolutely. We should look at your chart. So
that would be so much fun. Oh my gosh. We'll chat about that. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, magical mavens, what are your thoughts about the topics we touched upon in this conversation? I would love to know what your experience has been with astrology and the pagan sabbats or the great year, or literally anything else that this conversation may have sparked in your mind. I invite you to let us know in the comments. And for more seasonal living magic, I invite you to check out this playlist right here.